Welcome to Get Real with ECAR. This week's edition features attorney Yona Gregory and the governor's extension of the eviction moratorium.
I have clients who called me. I had one yesterday. She was saying that, she thought that her tenant was going to take $1,500 to vacate a property in Westport as a cash for keys. And I was like laughing. Like, of course, she's not going to take $1,500 to leave out of a beautiful property in Westport. You need to cough up like at least 10 grand. The woman was like, oh my goodness. Like, yeah, that's the reality. You know, $1,500, even in this market where we are in Norwich, New London, probably wouldn't cut the mustard for a cash for keys. They know they'd get a lot more.
Yeah, these guys were trying for about 7 grand.
And I think that's, given what you're telling me, honestly, think it's pretty reasonable because the cost to your client of waiting and letting this thing pan out, you know, regardless of when you can serve a notice to quit, when you can file, you've got courts now that are so backlogged with 6 months of having not done anything. And during that time, lawyers like myself, we're still filing cases.
Right.
So all those are backlogged.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would tell your client maybe $7,000 isn't a bad deal. But make sure they get the keys when they give the cash, because I have so many people who are like, oh my gosh, I had this one person gave $20,000 to a tenant to vacate. They didn't vacate, and that was that.
Is there any recourse for these landlords? Like, so I had multiple offers. I had about 20,000 over asking, and we lost the deal because they wouldn't leave. Is there any recourse for the landlord to later go after these folks?
Well, they can always go after them in small claims for the unpaid rent and the damages to the unit. But, you know, to sue them for the difference between what they could sell it for, I wouldn't even bother, because most of these people are judgment proof regardless. And what is the landlord going to do? Bring a case, have to prove that they were the sole reason why the buyers went away. They've got to have the buyers testify. Yeah, had it not been for these tenants, we would have pursued the property. Buyers may get up there and say, well, there were several issues with the property, and then you're done. I mean, who's going to do that in practical? Again, you know, There's principle. Yes, you're right. Practical, that's not going to happen.
Right. Understood.
Sorry, Linda. I never give anyone good news.
I feel so bad for these people. I just feel so bad. You want to help them, but
absolutely.
All right, who's next?
Number.
Bill, go.
Are these 4 exceptions the only way to get tenants out? I mean, what if they're just holding over?
Right. So holding over is not an exception. These are the only 4 exceptions now that the governor has issued in his order, the number 9E, and that's really what we're going on right now. So he has not said lapse of time, squatting. He has not identified any of those as an exception. Therefore, my opinion is, you know, you can't start an eviction unless it's specifically accepted in his ruling, because if you do that, you could be dragging someone into 3 months of agony, and then at the end of it, it gets dismissed. But
okay, and that is effective today, right, Yona? Right now?
I'm sorry?
That's effective right now?
That's effective right now, yes. So the other side of the whole, you know, holding over part is that might be an avenue where there could be a landlord who is trying to actually move in the property, or it could be something where it's a serious nuisance, they're holding over and they're causing havoc. You know, maybe you could go for one of those other things. Sometimes they go hand in hand, but not always.
All right. Evan Evans, do you have a question?
Hi, Evan.
Hi. My questions are more for, I believe you had, with other attorneys, had filed suit on behalf of landlords about the governor interfering with contracts between people. Is that moving forward, or where are we with that?
It's moving forward, but that wasn't my lawsuit, to be clear. I was just recommending people join that group because that was the one group that was actually pursuing a federal lawsuit against the governor for the actions that basically took away property rights unconstitutionally. So that's a lawsuit that's pending. I'm not really, you know, again, I donated to it, but it's not necessarily a class action suit. So it's still moving forward, but I don't know really exactly what the status is on it. It's still pending.
Is NAR involved in that, Yona?
I'm sorry?
Is the National Association of Realtors involved in that at all?
No, it's a bunch of private landlords in Connecticut who were, you know, obviously aggrieved and miffed by the whole initial ruling for the rent, you know, for the moratorium. So they brought it into federal court. It's like an illegal taking action type of a thing. So it's a very complicated kind of constitutional claim, and they may or may not win, but at least they're standing up for themselves.
Well, one of the results is I'm in serious jeopardy of losing one of my properties because it happens to be a single family and I'm getting zero rent.
Right. Right.
And there's nothing I can do about it.
Well, if it's a single family, maybe you were having a bona fide intention of moving in. I don't know. But
I could never make that case because I live in another single family across town.
got it. So, and I wouldn't want anyone to, lie or anything like that. So if it's not happening, then no. But if they're not one of those exact exceptions that I gave, then exactly that,
Not.
you cannot pursue it.
They're
No,
not.
not
It's-
until January. And I want to look at the order just really quick to make sure it's January 1st, because the CDC order is January 1st and the governor may be,
Yeah, I believe it's till January 1st.
it is
Yona,
January 1st, yeah.
For the record, restate the 4 exceptions. My recording did not start until after you listed them. So
Got it.
people beyond today can listen to this. Please restate them.
Okay, so now we have 4 exceptions per today's order from the governor, which is the extension of the executive order number 9E. So there's 4 exceptions in Connecticut right now where landlords can file a notice to quit for evictions. The 4 exceptions are rent that's been unpaid through prior to February 29th of this year. So if someone didn't pay rent in January of last year, that landlord can do a notice to quit for non-payment. The second one is serious nuisance, and we talked a little bit about it, serious nuisance, but it is very specific, and they have to be careful with that to make sure that really what they have is an actual serious nuisance as defined by the statute. The third reason is a made-up reason now by our governor, who's made up something called serious non-payment. And again, I said as a landlord, I think all non-payment is serious, but the governor has defined it as 6 months from the time of March until now. So if a tenant did not pay March, April, May, June, July, that gives them the, that says they're outside of the exception. They would have had to pay no money during 6 months of their rent since March, and then they can get a notice to quit for non-payment. The last reason, the number 4 is the bona fide, landlord has a bona fide intention of moving into the property as their principal resident. So landlord buys property, they're thinking they're going to move in, maybe they buy it at auction, and their intention is to live in the property. That is an exception, and they can serve a notice to quit prior to the 1st of the year, according to today's order, which again, these things are like changing all the time.
Thank you. Bill, did you have a question about that?
I just want a clarification. Does it have to be 6 months in a row? Or
No.
March, they paid August, but then didn't September.
So I read it last night and then I was like, oh my God, I read it really quick. And then this morning I reread it very, very carefully. And it does not say that they have to be consecutive. So the way I read it, and let me just look at it while I'm telling you, just to make sure. It is for, let me just tell you, serious non-payment means a rent arrearage equal to or greater than 6 months worth of rent due on or after March 1st, which shall exclude all other costs, fees, and attorney fees and charges. So basically, all it is a matter of rent. So if they have 6 months of rent from March to now, during that time of unpayment, then yes. So the way I read it is it does not have to be consecutive months.
So that's going to cause a problem in the court system because he has put out executive orders, and every renter in the state of Connecticut knows that he has said that if you are having a financial hardship, you don't have to pay rent. And so now you're going to have those 2 executive orders clashing. Mm-hmm. That's just setting landlords up for failure.
I 100% agree with you. And, we have some general questions, but just to get a little bit more specific, and this is probably more information than anyone wants to know, but as a kind of a side note, part of this order that he's issued has included a requirement for notice to quits have an attachment to it. Basically, the CDC has an affidavit that all tenants can fill out, and this is federal, saying, hey, I was affected by COVID in a negative way. If that landlord gets that affidavit, they then have to stop the process through January 1st. So now the governor has said, yes, there are these exceptions. You get these exceptions, but when you serve your notice to quit, you have to attach this CDC order, which says to people, if you fill out this paper, they can't evict you until January 1st. So I'm a tenant and I get a notice to quit with this thing attached that says, if you fill this out, this landlord has to stop until January 1st. What am I doing? I'm going to fill this paper out right away and give it to the landlord. And guess what? That stops the process automatically. No questions asked, no interviews till January 1st. So my feeling is landlords should just wait till January 1st anyway, because they're wasting their time, because every single tenant is going to fill that paper out. But that's just, that's the like bad news on top of bad news. So I wasn't going to necessarily get into all that, but it is important to know that, practically, again, he's issued this order. There are exceptions, but then he puts this thing in there. And to me, it means that no eviction is going to work anyway.
Wow. Wow. Humdinger. Jessica, I know you had a question.
My question was basically if an owner would like to sell their house, their tenant is currently in the process of being evicted. They have gone through everything that you just stated and given until January 1st. It doesn't seem like they would be willing to let anybody come into the house if it were listed for sale to have it shown.
Right.
I mean, basically tying my hands with procuring a buyer, because who's gonna buy a house you can't get inside of?
Exactly. And you would think, logic sometimes would say to you, hey, if I was a tenant and I knew I was not paying rent in my property and I was already like taking a lot from the landlord, I'd be like, come on in, I'll clean it, I'll do whatever you want. That's not how this operates. Typically speaking, someone who's paid no rent for a longer time, they're more unlikely to cooperate. And they have like a bad attitude. I have no idea. It's a kind of a reverse psychology thing. But in any event, my clients who ask me, hey, can I sell my property? Yeah, you can sell your property. Are you going to? No, you're not, because these tenants are not going to make your real estate, agent's life easy. They're not going to let them in. And the question always is, well, can't I force them to? No, because there's nobody that's going to enforce this. Like, you're going to call the police every time you have a showing, and now you've got these buyers showing up. They want to turn a lockbox key. They don't want like police to be, it's just not going to happen. Practically speaking, again, you're probably better if you have a tenant who's not going to be cooperative from the get-go, probably better just to wait. Unless it's a property that's like an investment property. Say you have a property, it's a fixer-upper, and a lot of times investors buy properties sight unseen. They purchase auction homes. They don't really care about the inside. They know it's a quote, gut job. That may be something that you could list because they don't care.
Okay, Samantha, did you have a question?
I've been having a lot of difficulty in regards to service dogs. What exact paperwork will I know that you can get anything, you can download it off the internet. How do I know that that's a real certification?
Hi, Samantha.
Hi, look who I have. Penny.
Oh my God. Yes. I was going to say, where's your service dog? Look at that little muffin face. So Samantha and I share a love of Chihuahuas, which are the opposite of service dogs. If anyone knows Chihuahuas, they're like they're total jerks. But anyway, we love them. So to answer your question, the truth is you'll never know if someone's service dog is a legitimate service dog or not. But you're not going to go down the road of fighting that battle, because all it's going to end up happening is you're going to get sued and have to pay a fine for questioning someone who is a protected class or who has legitimate problems. Like, you just don't even want to do it. So my thought is, most of these things are like not real. They're baloney kinds of things. And yeah, you can get it off the internet. I could print something that says my dog Coconut is a service dog, and it's such a joke because, again, he's like disservice. He can barely even see. But I could literally print something right now that would authorize him as a service dog. So it's all a crock, basically. But the question is, how do I know? You don't know. You won't know. You will know inside that, hey, this is baloney, but I don't recommend anyone fight it.
And are we distinguishing between service dog and companion pet?
Emotional support.
There's emotional support.
Those are two separate things,
They're
right?
completely separate things.
Right.
What you're talking about, what you were just talking about, is the emotional support. Service animals actually have paperwork that go with them. That's for hearing impaired, blind. Those have paperwork that actually go with them.
Right, exactly. So there's two levels of it. But again, like, someone gives you an emotional support dog and they're trying to say that they have some sort of a mental illness or something like that. I would not even, I just tell people, yes, we take all that paperwork, end of story, and just follow and comply with what the law is. And that way you're never going to be, I never want to see a real estate agent in the course of their job getting sued for the by the ADA or anything like that. It's just not worth
Right.
it.
Okay.
That was a good question. Who else? Gail or Deb or Mike Hauser? Tisha.
If there's no other questions, I mean, I can certainly tell people right now, I'm getting a lot of real estate agents that are calling me. Everybody's kind of at their wits' end with this thing as far as trying to support property owners that are in a bad place. Again, we heard from Evan, he might lose his property because he's got people in there who are not paying. And it's such a, it's an anger. You're getting to a point right now, especially with the governor's new orders. What I'm saying is there's going to be violence between, landlords and tenants, and ultimately this is going to erupt because you have like a perfect storm going on where you have people like Evan but that aren't, that are not like him, that no, I can't, do anything threatening. He's not going to risk it, getting arrested. But you have a lot of landlords who are like, we don't even care. We're going to self-help. We're going to throw these people out on the street. We're going to lock the doors. If you have clients who are that angry right now, the anger is just so overpowering, and I don't blame these landlords at all for being angry, because it is an illegal taking of property in my mind. But, there's a lot of dangers now going on. A landlord in Hartford got decapitated about 4 weeks ago, maybe a little longer, maybe 2 months ago, by a tenant. And the issue was over unpaid rent. He went to the police in Hartford. He asked for help and he was turned away and told this is a housing court matter. He went home and he was decapitated in his bed by a tenant. So there's violence going on.
Wow.
I know. I hope everybody's not eating their lunch. Is this a lunch thing?
Wow, that is terrible.
I know this used to be like lunch and learn. This is like
percentage of like our members and other landlords, like how big of a problem is this in Connecticut? Like, is this?
Well, it's it's definitely a huge problem. You've got the people like, that are going to lose their house. You've got the people who, more than anything, you may have clients that are, that you do property management for. I have a lot of people who say a boyfriend and a girlfriend, they were dating for 1 month. The boyfriend says, yeah, go ahead, you can move in here. And then she turns into like, some crazy. And then he's stuck with her for the entire duration of this whole thing. And now through January. Can you imagine? Like, it's easier right now to get a divorce than it is to get somebody out of your property. So you've got people who have let people move in during the beginning of COVID, who met them at church, who said like, hey, we're down and out. We feel sorry. Good deeds. They let them move in during this whole thing when in the beginning, everybody thought everyone was going to go like, starving. And then those church people turned out to be like completely psychotic and have harassed people inside their homes. We have so many situations of landlords being flat out tormented by people who are inside their homes and they cannot get them out. So when I say, perfect storm, I'm really talking about a lot of that kind of thing that's going on where you have people living together who can you imagine, like, we all complain about like being locked in our houses with our spouses right now and, joking like, oh my God, this is making us crazy. But this is like even worse. Imagine if it wasn't someone you actually still wanted to be married to. So you have a lot of people that are stuck together now in a close environment. They can't get people out of their house. So you own a house and you have no property rights. So it is really, it's pretty outrageous, but at the other side of it, it's one of those things where if you can't do anything about it at all, sometimes you just have to like, yoga breath it out and try to help your people. Just say, look, there's nothing you can do, just kind of stay calm.
What are you recommending for people that have a place to rent out right now and are looking for tenants that they're not going to run into this? Like, have you changed the application guidelines that you?
Right. Well, the group of landlords who brought the lawsuit, who are the more vocal ones, they have, decided to increase their restrictions about letting people in because, again, if you're going to make us get stuck and saddle us with people who are like this, then we're not going to even let them in to begin with. So we're going to make the rules even more stringent. So, you can absolutely do that. Again, it's a lot of the people who are left in these properties are people that I wouldn't have rented to at all. I mean, of my 28 units, knock on wood, all of my occupants are paying. So,
that means you had a good screening process in the beginning.
Right, that, and I have Airbnbs and those are pretty booked up, but exactly. So if you have good screening process and you've never let anyone in who is going to be like this kind of person, then you want to continue to do that. But if you're a person who, I have a landlord who had somebody down in their property in Westbrook, right on the water, right on the beach, that rents during the summer for like $10,000 a week, and got saddled with some people who he let be an academic renter, did no checking on these people, and all he had to do was type them in. They were already being evicted. Same thing, another academic rental, and it was their fourth runaround. He did no research, and now he's extremely upset, going to the news, etc., because he was so financially harmed. But again, he did not do his diligence in the beginning. And yeah, the price that he's paying is way worse than what it should be. But it's always going to be a situation where, you want to do your diligence in the beginning, because when something like this happens, you certainly don't want to be on the other end of that.
So what is good due diligence in this time of pandemic and even beyond?
Right. Well, now it's difficult because the cases that should be being filed aren't being filed, and since nothing is happening, and then you have another issue where you have, say you call a landlord to get a reference, and all that landlord wants to do is get these people the heck out of there. They probably will lie. So I don't have a good answer for you. I mean, obviously you want to do whatever you were doing before, but you have to be sleuthy, you know what I mean, about it, because you've got to understand that there's a lot of elements here that are going to maybe possibly saddle you with someone that you don't want because of the, this other pressures coming from these other things, like a landlord who may be willing to lie. I mean, hey, if Evan, you got a call tomorrow and it said, these people can move into my house and move out of my house, what do you think of them? It's really going to be hard for you to want to be truthful. You may just avoid that person to not give them the truth just so that you can get rid of these people. Who knows? Maybe they'll be good tenants for them. But it's one of those things where there's a lot of people who are set up with reasons to not be truthful. So getting personal recommendations from other landlords, that's not 100%. Going and finding out whether they have a court case filed against them, that's not 100% because there's no cases being filed. So it's going to be tricky for sure.
Well, definitely talking to the employer, getting maybe a couple of copies of paycheck stubs.
Good idea. Yes.
Do you require like a bank check for the deposit to make sure you've got some actual cash in hand? Or is it
I don't do that. I just do the tenant tracks myself screening. And I haven't had any vacancies in this time period, but that is, getting a certified check, that's not really going to help you going forward, because that only makes the person give you good cash in the beginning. I would rather have them give me a bad check to begin with, not let them move in until it's cleared and see that it bounces, and then know like these are not going to be people that are good. So maybe give them an opportunity to give you a bad check would be a good idea.
Right. Bill, go ahead.
I have a suggestion. Rather than calling the current tenant, the current landlord, call the previous landlord and the one before that. They don't have any skin in the game or any tenants to leave.
That's a good idea, Bill. That's definitely a good recommendation. And it's a recommendation for even non-pandemic times, because a landlord who's doing an eviction against a non-payer, they're always going to want to maybe, get them out of there. So I always think that the past landlord's not necessarily the best resource. It's like you said, and it's smart. I should have mentioned that. It's the one before or the priors. Keeping in mind, though, too, that there's the people who were great tenants and then got a divorce. They were great tenants and then they got back on drugs. No one has a crystal ball, and there's so many different ways to vet people. And you as realtors, the responsibility is so immense because you don't have a crystal ball. So you want to make sure that you set up your clients to know that, listen, I'll do my due diligence, but I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm faced with a time that I can only give you this information, and you have to know that this information is what it is. It may not be a perfect tenant, but I can't ensure that anyone's going to be perfect right now. All I'm telling you is these factors.
Yona, I find it rather fascinating that the government thinks it's okay to put this financial burden on public citizens who own homes. What, if anything, are you aware of that they're working on to take the burden off the homeowner and put it back on the government?
So there's supposedly $40 million of money that is supposed to be available for tenants to, pay their unpaid rent back to their landlord. Since the program was started, and it was initially $20 million. I saw it on the news that only 2 families have been successfully awarded the money because of the government red tape and the dysfunctionality of any sort of
federal
government.
Or state?
That's state. Yeah. So, and with this new order that the governor put out, he's saying that he's doubling the $20 to $40 million somehow. I don't know where the money's coming from, but how it was being allocated was all screwed up, like anything with government usually is.
So that's something Kevin could be tapping into, hopefully, to save his
right.
property.
But the problem with it is a lot of times is the tenant has to make the application, and unbelievably, you get these tenants who are like, screw you, I'm just going to stay here for free. I want to do nothing to help myself, nothing to help you, because I am entitled to, all of this stuff for no reason. So a lot of tenants aren't willing to make applications. So I do a lot of advocacy for landlords behind the scenes, where I talk to legal aid and I work with them to try to get them to understand that if you make the tenant responsible, then the landlord's never going to get the money. So, I really want landlords to be able to do the initial application and then get awarded the money directly, because it's the landlord the money's going to in the end anyway.
So the landlord could make the application, even though it's meant for tenants to get money to give to the landlord.
Well, it would be nice if they could, but a lot of these programs do not permit that, no. Yeah, I know. And so if you have a tenant who is a decent person and is like legitimately saying to you and cooperating and saying, look, I'm so sorry, I this or that, that's a good person to go to and say, listen, I found this program, there's money, you may have to do a little groundwork on your own and look on the governor's website, there's links, things like that. Say to the person, listen, apply for this money. And maybe, you can prod them and, get more bees with honey kind of a thing. If you're just nice to the tenant, try to get them to make application, because most of these programs allocate up to $4,000 for back rent for a landlord. Now, to me, $4,000 is really not even a lot, especially in like Stamford, where the rent for 1 month is $4,000. But in our area, $4,000 could very well be 3 or 4 months worth of rent. And that will definitely help a lot of my clients.
Wow. I know that the realtors strongly oppose the eviction moratorium. For those of you that are on the call today, I do want to remind you that we do have a legislative membership meeting on October 14th, and the first speaker will be Christian Hoysrat, who is the political analyst for NAR. He's going to give a federal issues update, and one of the hottest topics right now is the landlord tenant issue.
Right.
So,
right.
Stay tuned for that and register for that. What else do we have, Yona? This is fascinating.
I know. I'm like racking my brain thinking, gosh, I could tell you guys all kinds of horror stories over the past, 6 months, but I don't want to discourage or scare anyone. It will be over. And like I always tell clients, even before COVID, with evictions, even the worst ones, eventually people leave. We get everybody out in the end, and these people will be forced to leave the property. So, instead of, maybe just try to help people look forward and realize there will be an end to this. And in the meantime, people like Evan who could possibly lose their property, maybe encourage them to try to get some of this financing. But absolutely being vocal at this point right now, you have to be vocal on a government level. And being as your realtors, you have a lot of oomph and power because of the numbers that you have. So it's a really great way to go at it and try to change things from that point of view. And really what we don't want, we're not necessarily asking them to stop the moratorium, because there's no one who doesn't think, these people should be given some time. Nobody, including landlords, wants to see everybody being evicted, because that's not going to help the landlord. What we really want is that the orders are more clear. In other words, having to serve a notice to quit and then attach a piece of paper that says to the person, just fill this out and you don't have to do anything until January 1st. I mean, there's so many things that are in the order that are like counter to what is going to be helpful. So all I would want to see is that the order was more confined to specific cases of non-payment that were caused by, COVID-related issues. And it's hard to understand even how there are any of those, given everyone's knowledge of how much money people were getting on unemployment. So, it's a tough situation, because a lot of my landlords are like, well, why didn't they pay the rent? They were getting $600 extra a week, etc. So the government's really setting up a situation where I don't understand how they're telling people that they shouldn't have paid their rent when they were getting more money. But, you know, again, that's coming from my point of view as a landlord and being, you know, on the other side of it. And then you've got people who advocate for tenants who see something completely different than I do. And I'm open to that. But my viewpoint is always from a landlord.
What would you, Yona, or you guys on the call say about, is it a good time to become an investor and pick up properties right now because there's a need for housing? Ugh.
Honestly, I think in like 6 months, it's going to be a great time, because I really do think a lot of my clients are saying, I got to get out of this. I got to get out of this. I'm selling this property in Connecticut. I'm done here. So they're unable to sell for the reasons that we've already discussed about not getting people out. So what I think is, when January 1st starts and when foreclosure court starts moving along, because it hasn't, the market is going to be a great buyer's market again, like 6 months. That's my guess, but I'm not an analyst or anything like that. But I'm waiting personally to look for property to invest in for more units until that kind of shakes out. Because once these people can be evicted, they're going to list a bunch of properties. All these people are bailing out of Connecticut. Foreclosures are going to start. So you're going to see a lot of multi-units on the market right now. They're being sold like hotcakes, and I personally wouldn't buy them right now, but I'm thinking 6 months would be a great time to pick up properties.
I think you're
About a
right in line
single
with what Dr. Yunus said from NAR. He's our economic specialist, and he is predicting, you know, everybody is predicting like the economic impact from COVID-19 is going to be foreclosures and another housing bubble, but he has said it's not going to be like 10 years ago because there is such a long list of buyers. There's not going to be a lot of vacant, empty, foreclosed properties. They're going to get scooped up.
Right, and that's good. You know, that's definitely good for you guys and for me as a real estate closing attorney too. I mean, we want to see the closings keep going on. That keeps everyone making an income.
So Yona, I went to the
not good for the homeowners. It's not a good situation for tenants, but it won't be as bad of a recession or long drawn out bubble as it was 10 years ago.
I went to the temporary rental housing assistance program, which is what you referred to, and there's a note on it that says, due to the overwhelming number of submissions for assistance, the program is closed effective immediately.
Yes, and that is the program that he's saying is going to fund another $20 million into. So I would keep refreshing that, keep an eye on that, because that real quick question, where's your property, by the way?
Colchester.
Because I have local organizations who are trying to, they'll call me, they're trying to get rid of money, to be quite honest with you, and they have grants that are local. So if your tenants have children, I can connect you with some people that may be able to give them a grant.
It's a farm.
Oh gosh, you know what? It's funny. Farms are I've evicted 3 farms now, and they're like a nightmare, difficult. Yeah.
So the tenant's not difficult. If she could pay me, she would.
Yeah.
She's just not in a position because she was a healthcare worker, and believe it or not, her job got nixed. She's a home health aide.
But does she have animals? Is it a working farm?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the other thing I would say is, if she doesn't have any money coming in, I had another working farm where they didn't have money coming in, and animal control eventually shut the whole thing down because they didn't have any money to feed the animals. So that's something that you should take into consideration too. If you call the animal people, whatever they are in Colchester, they may get involved as well, because animal cruelty is no joke. And if there's no money coming in, she may not be feeding them.
What else? What else is going on? Is anyone else a landlord that's seeing trends or issues in the area that we want to know about?
I'm on by phone. Can you hear me, Susie, or no?
Yeah.
Okay, this is Denise Robillard. Hi, Yona. How are we doing?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
We good. We've also got some tenants that are, not the best. They've lost their job. They screwed up and got a temporary job, and they didn't get their unemployment because they worked 2 days here and 2 days. I mean, it's just a big mess. And yeah, she's basically just saying to me that, I can't get a job now and I can't collect unemployment, and sorry. I tried to have her apply for the assistance as well. And they said they'd send the landlord an email, which they never did. And that's the program you said is shut down now. And yeah.
Does she have kids?
I mean, she has two sons, and homeschooling and all of that stuff going on and the whole craziness. We just are letting her go. But I have a question about security deposits. If they agree to use their security deposit and they sign off that they'll put their security deposit towards a month's rent.
Yeah, they can do that. You can definitely release the security deposit. The governor has given authority to do that, but usually one month right now, a security deposit like a drop in the bucket. I would say that if you have kids, if you can email me, I'll link you into an organization locally that has money to help people with children.
Okay, because she's got
Yona,
two boys
what
and she's a
is
single
your
mom.
email address? I'll give it to everyone.
Oh, okay. It's Yona, Y-O-N-A, at YONALAW.com.
There you go.
Could you repeat that?
So it's Yona.
Are you gonna, Susie, are you doing that? Or
Yeah, I just put it in the chat box, Yona@yonalaw.com.
Yeah, and you
okay,
can
because
also
I'm on a cell phone and I'm out on the water today and I got nothing to write with at the moment. That's why I'm just saying.
Well, luckily Yona is an affiliate member, so you can find her through.
You can find me.
Yeah, I'll get my assistant to do that.
Yeah, perfect. You can always call me too, or you can also email us at evict@yonalaw.com. That's easier sometimes for people to remember. But I am available, and you know, we are getting, like, as you can imagine, inundated with people just calling us with generic, like, you know, questions about evictions. Generally speaking, if they're not our clients with a pending eviction, we do charge for consultations now, because otherwise I would be just volunteering my whole days answering questions. So usually we'll charge someone like $75 to just me to hear the story, tell them what I think, and that's usually worth it for them. It's like a 15-minute conversation, but at least it gets them the answers that they need from a private attorney.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, the same thing that the other people were saying. She's not adversarial. She's just in a really tough spot, and I couldn't put her on the street anyway. I just couldn't do it. But you know, after about 6 months of sucking it up at $1 grand a month, it starts to say, you know.
The local agencies are a great resource. TVCCA and all of those resources are great because they're going to start administering the money that's going to be put forward. So those agencies, being as they're administering it and they're like going to be putting it out, they're great resources to get linked into. And then another one just off the top of my head, Almost Home. So Almost Home is a local organization that helps people with kids. They have grant money. Betty Smith of Almost Home is awesome. She can help you. And then you also have Homeless Hospitality. They have money too.
And sometimes the towns have money for this. Yeah.
Well, a lot of times though, Susie, the town gives it to these programs to disseminate. So, and that's with Almost Home. They have $90,000 that was given to them by New London County to put the money out. And she called me and she's like, who do you have that wants this money? I'm like, I do, but so I gave her a bunch of clients that I thought would qualify. So if you have any tenants with kids, call Almost Home. If there are people that do not have kids, call Homeless Hospitality.
All right.
Good information. I think just about time to wrap things up.
All right.
Yona, I just want to thank you so much for taking an hour with us today. This has been extraordinarily great information, right up to speed. And not necessarily all good stuff. But
no, it's job hazard. I know. I never give anyone good news. I'm like a dentist or something. But if anyone has questions, definitely give me a call or send me an email. And obviously, we're still happy to do real estate closings since we can't do evictions, and we're very busy with those, and we love those too. So it's nice to see everyone. Samantha, I love your little muffin face that you put up there if you're still on.
Thanks everyone for checking in.